Now, for this song specifically, what I'm going to do first is show you the arrangement and the different samples. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to show you the actual presets that I used, which I just sampled from a few VSTs. So if you're interested in that, be sure to stick around till the end of the video. Now, we'll start with the soft pad here, and this is the core sound for the song. And that is a sample I took, which again, I will show later. And that pad is thrown into a sampler here. Its original pitch is at C3. And what I did is just played that down on an E2, which pitches the sample down, makes it a little more dark, gritty, and creates some more texture by scrubbing through that sampler. And this is something we've talked about a lot, right? Sampling elements and then putting them into a sampler is really going to enhance that overall sound of the sample, make it sound a little bit more old school, because when you take a sample like that and play it up and down the keyboard, pitched up, pitched down, it starts to manipulate that sample in kind of a unnatural way. So a good tip here is if you're making these old PSX, PlayStation era sounds and songs, sample everything, put it in a sampler, and play around with that pitch. Now, the next sound I have here is also a sample. Same thing here. We have the sound at its original pitch. And we have that pitched down to an E2 as well. Now, for this sample specifically, I have a high pass filter on it, so anything below 800 Hertz we're just cutting out. And that's because this pad up here has a lot of low-end content, so we just want to ensure we have enough room. It's not a super aggressive cut, but just a little bit to help with the overall mix. Next thing I'm doing with this sound is automating the volume throughout the arrangement here. And the reason I did that is because I wanted the sound to kind of fade in and out of the arrangement. I didn't want it to be super static, and this is just a very easy way to achieve that. So if I stack this with the pad, it sounds like this. Very easy way to add some movement and breathing room in your arrangement. Now, next sound I have here, same concept. We have a sample at its original pitch. It sounds like this. And we just pitch it down to an E2. And so these two sounds here, while there is some musicality to them, they're more of sonic textures that kind of overlay on top of this pad up here in the beginning. So using these types of textural beds and soundscapes, which you can get from VSTs, think like Romplers, Korg Wavestation, is a good way to create ambience without having to have a sample pack. So if you don't have an ambient sample pack, grab something like a Wavestation or a Korg Triton, and you can create a lot of these really cool textural sounds. Next thing we have down here, another sample, same thing. And we just pitch that down. So these are just more textural elements, right? We're stacking these up, and then through our arrangement, we're slowly bringing in each element and building on the song here. So if we just kind of solo the textures that we have so far, we get this. And then we can bring in the pad. So this is another concept I talked about in my Deus Ex dystopian ambient video. You can almost split out your arrangement and your track as two key components. It's the more musical elements, so pads, leads, strings, and then your ambience elements. And so if you were to solo the ambience, does it make sense in context? Does it give off this impression that we're underwater? What is that scene that you're trying to paint? And then if you solo the music by itself in context, right, does it make sense? Next thing we have here sound-wise is a very brief progression on a string sound. So strings are an amazing way to introduce emotion and progression into a song. For ambience, I tend to stay away from melodies and things of this nature. But in this instance, I thought it just made sense to bring in a little bit of a high string, playing a very brief progression throughout the later end of the song. So if we solo all of these elements together, all right, so the icing on top is just individual ambient samples that I've dropped in throughout the track. And what I was looking for, just in reference of, what I was composing this for, some type of underwater scene, I wanted underwater elements. So the sound of water moving, the sound of little creatures under the sea, so whales, anything of that nature. And so I'll just play through some of the samples I have here. Really great bubble sample there. And then we have this one. That one's cool because it's like a bass drop with like this bubbly element to it. So I put that one at the start of some of these musical phrases as a bit of a exclamation point, letting that listener know, hey, something's changing. We're moving into a new section of the song. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we got to get some sea creatures in there. You need some whale, dolphin samples, so we got a few of those. And then a few reverse cymbals in here as well to transition into different parts. With my reverse cymbals, I love to really thin them out with an EQ here, send them through a huge delay, huge reverb, so it creates a really nice ambient transition cymbal. Very smooth, very ambient, just what we want for this tune. All right, so we looked at the arrangement. Now let's go back and look at some of the original samples here and where they came from. So that pad sample came from the Korg Wave Station, and we have a modified variant of this preset here, Piano Breath, which actually comes from my preset pack that I'll link up on the screen there. And in that pack, you get 49 performances for the Korg Wave Station dedicated to ambient music. So if you like the sound of this pad, the sound of PlayStation era pads in general, go check that preset pack out. It is really good, if I do say so myself. So I took this preset here and I just modified for some of the different parts, the amp envelopes. on these different oscillators so that the sounds faded in a little more gradually. Right, so this is the type of amp envelope you would want for a pad. And so we took a B here and played a B minor 11 chord here, and that is what we sampled. And then threw into this sampler down here. And then, of course, once we pitch it down, that's a sound and texture you just cannot achieve by sequencing a VST or instrument directly. That's why the sampler is so important. All right, so the next sound effect here comes from the Korg Wave Station. This is the Alien Vibraslap patch. I did not modify this one. It sounds like this. And then once we put that in our sampler and pitched it down, and with that high pass on there, we got rid of a lot of that low end rumble as well. So Korg Wave Station is great, not just for pads, but really any type of ambient effect. And then when you shape that and shave out frequencies, you can really create any type of texture. You could take a pad, do a similar high pass, and end up with just a textural element. All right, next sound here, also from the Korg Wave Station. This is the Splashdown Performance. And then once we threw it in our sampler and pitched it down, next up, also from the Korg Wave Station, this is the Voco de Drum Performance. Sounds like this. Actually heavily uses a wave sequence, and that's an area where the Wave Station shines, or these kind of quirky little sequences. And so we took that, threw it in a sampler, pitched it down. All right, and finally here we are in the beloved Korg Triton. This is the Motion Ocean program. And this is what we use for our string. And so we took that, threw it in a sampler. And that's how we did it, folks. So to recap here, for that PSX sound, especially when we're talking aquatic ambience, you want to go for an old school Rompler. Korg Wave Station came out around 1993, I believe. So it was used in a lot of these soundtracks. And as you heard here, amazing for ambient pads, but also just general textures within here. And once you throw it in a sampler and start pitching it around, that's when you hit that PlayStation style sound, because that's how they were creating these tunes back in the day. So that is the authentic way to get that sound. Sample things, throw it in a sampler, shape those sounds, make them what you want them to be, and have fun.